Welcome back to Utility Sports. We are coming at you live today. We've been really busy. We've got a lot on our plates here. Austin's working a full-time job. I'm working a full-time job. And we're trying to navigate how we're going to go about this on the channel. And we're trying to make time for our viewers. You guys are so awesome. We want to make sure that we're bringing content to you. And live streams are going to be a way that we're trying to do that here over the next coming months, especially when we're trying to adjust to certain schedules. So in this video, in this live stream, we're going to be talking about NFL Week 1, a little bit of a preview to Week 2, kind of our pick'ems, who we think is going to be good, who's going to lose, and also some fantasy previews, and maybe even talk about some 2022 NFL draft. We do have some mock drafts up on the channel, so make sure you go check those out. We have some Madden rebuilds as well. And if there's other things you're interested in seeing, we are on TikTok. We had a semi-viral video this past week that was really funny. I think that you guys should go check that out. And also hit that subscribe button, and also leave a like on today's live stream and lets us know we're doing a good job here. I'm Legacy. Welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here. Austin, what's your thoughts so far on Week 1 of the NFL season?
Week 1 was pretty crazy. A lot of things happened that we really didn't expect. There were quite a few upsets, one of them being the Pittsburgh-Buffalo game. I thought that was just wild that Pittsburgh was able to go into Buffalo, get the victory. I mean, they're a good football team, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people view Buffalo as the second best team in the AFC. So that was kind of shocking. Another really, really shocking game was how close the Chiefs and Browns were. We knew it was going to be a good game, but at one point in time, we thought that the Cleveland Browns could actually pull out that game. Ended up, eventually losing the lead, but that was a very, very competitive game. And then also the game that was probably the most shocking to me was Houston and Jacksonville. I mean, a lot of people were picking Jacksonville to win that game, and Houston came out and absolutely dominated the Jaguars with Tyrod Taylor. So overall, there was a couple of shocking games, and there was a couple of things that happened that we were, expecting. So overall, pretty interesting week.
Right. It was definitely crazy. The AFC gave us some really, really good games this week, some really interesting storylines. Let's go ahead and spend a little bit more time talking about the Cleveland Browns and Kansas City Chiefs, because that was the AFC Conference Championship game last year. Of course, came down to the wire. Baker Mayfield threw an interception on that final drive, got tripped up by the shoelace. I believe he was just trying to throw it out of bounds. And then newly acquired Chief Mike Hughes goes ahead and makes the game-winning play for them on that interception, Austin. What was your biggest takeaway from both Kansas City and Cleveland in that stellar Week 1 matchup?
Well, I'm going to start with Kansas City. They are a resilient group. This team is never out of it, and especially with Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, you're not going to be out of a game. And that's the thing that's scary about their offense. They can just pop like that. And also defensively, they are still underrated defensively. They have a very, very good defensive unit. But looking at the Cleveland side of things, Baker is not that kind of guy that's going to necessarily carry a team. I think, he's going to have to be the product of what's around him. And luckily for Cleveland, they have a lot of pieces surrounding him at the receiver position, 2 really good running backs, and a phenomenal defense to go on top of all of that, plus a top 3 offensive line in the league. So overall, very, very good team. But Baker, he has some limitations. He's not a top 10 quarterback, but he is a guy that is very, very serviceable and can get you to a Super Bowl. Granted, you have the right pieces.
Right. I think he's a total gamer. He's someone who, week to week, maybe you're not like, oh, this is the guy, I would love to have on my team compared to a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Patty Mahomes or even maybe like Dak Prescott. But going into a game with him, you feel fairly confident that, hey, our quarterback's probably not going to lose us this game. And he's probably going to keep us in it if we're not having the best performance from some of the other guys on the football field. And also Myles Garrett, his get off in Week 1 looked phenomenal. He was stellar yet again at that edge position. I think that at this point, it's almost easy to not mention him as a storyline. With how good he is, it's just like, oh, we expect Myles Garrett to be absolutely phenomenal. He was very, very great again in that Week 1 matchup. And Tyreek Hill also had a stellar performance. You had talked about him a little bit. Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, that connection is otherworldly, honestly, at this point. I can't really stress enough how great those two are together. You're looking at probably, Austin, I would like to know your thought on this. Is Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the league right now?
It's pretty tough to say that they're not. With their chemistry and just how dynamic each of them are individually makes for a beautiful pairing, because you could make the argument that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. It's a good majority of people would say that he is. And then also on the other end of it, a lot of people do believe Tyreek Hill is the best receiver in the NFL, and he's starting to earn that title. He's more than just a speed guy. There's some people that are out there that are kind of wild and thinking that's all he can do is run fast. I mean, so could John Ross, but he was brutal in the league. There's a lot more to the position than just being fast. So guys that have that elite speed, that elite foot speed doesn't necessarily translate, but he does a lot of different things well after the catch. He's a phenomenal route runner. This guy is very much in that conversation and should be considered at least a top 3 receiver at the very bare minimum.
Right. Everyone, welcome to the stream that's in here. We love having your guys' support. Go ahead, throw your questions in the chat as well about week 1 or week 2 of the NFL season, maybe some fantasy questions as well. We would love to hear from you. What's your thoughts on the NFL? We'll go ahead and have a big time discussion with all of you. That's one of the best parts here at Utility Sports is you have a lot of collaboration here between ourselves and our viewers. So that's honestly my favorite part. Austin, talking about Tyreek Hill, like you had mentioned, I think he's really progressed as a route runner. Maybe 3-4 years ago, we could have talked about him. Yeah, he's a speed demon, and that's really it. But he's, mastered that craft, in my opinion, as well, when it comes to the route running, especially out of the slot area. And on deep routes, I think that he does it better than probably anyone in the NFL at this point. And like Patrick Mahomes said, just throw the ball. Tyreek Hill will be down there somewhere. Those two are just a match made in heaven. Let's go ahead and transition to another game. Specifically, the one I want to talk about is one you had mentioned in the opener with Houston and Jacksonville. Austin, I know you're a big-time Jacksonville Jaguars fan. We have a lot of Jaguars fans on the channel. What is going on in Jacksonville? Because I think that was one of the games that we considered very winnable for them, and they kind of got shown out of the stadium on opening weekend. So I don't really know what to make of Urban Meyer's first career game as a Jaguars head coach and what to make of Trevor Lawrence's first career game.
Let's start with Urban Meyer. I think he was just not ready for the moment, being on this stage. Everywhere he's been, with the exception with him being at Utah, was he the guy? Was he the guy? Now here's my thing about Urban Meyer. He's very rah-rah. He's very much a guy that can get his troops together, win on talent and that kind of thing. But when it comes to X's and O's, he's not that kind of coach. He's never been that kind of coach, nor will he ever be that coach. And the coordinators that he's brought in, Joe Cullen, Darrell Bevell, are average to below average. We know Darrell Bevell's his track record. He's had some very nice years in Seattle, but I mean, really outside of that, I mean, he's at least an average coordinator. And we don't really know with Cullen. So overall, the coordinators, X's and O's wise, they're not great. The team itself is not built to win. I've been saying this ever since free agency happened. I did not like basically any move that they made during that offseason. They spent a lot of money in the corner room. They spent a lot of draft capital, and they still got torched. They were not winning the line of scrimmage. Trevor Lawrence looked a little overwhelmed. He tried to play, I shouldn't say overwhelmed. I think he was more trying to play hero ball, resulting in 3 interceptions. However, he had the 4th most passing yards of any rookie in their debut ever. So that is promising in that regard. He can really sling it, but I think he was just trying to do too much, especially since they got down early, and that's kind of the result of the game.
Right. You and I are not the type of people to overreact to a week 1 performance. I think that you and I still consider Trevor Lawrence to be the face of that franchise, the franchise savior. Honestly, I think that's a fair title for Trevor Lawrence, just with the state of where that franchise has been. You're looking at a team that hasn't really had, an elite quarterback. Mark Brunell, David Grotter are the 2 best that come to mind off the top of my head. So you're looking at, still a team that needs to find its identity. So I want to know, Austin, with Trevor Lawrence still being the face of the franchise for the future, what's your expectation for them this year, win-loss record in a 17-game season?
In a 17-game season, I really see them I see them going 2-15, maybe. I think they're going to sneak the other game out against Houston, then they'll get one more against an Indy or somebody. I really have low expectations for the team. And it's not just me being pessimistic, it's the product I saw on the field. I think a lot of people that, aren't pessimistic fans could see that was just a brutal game to watch. And, do I anticipate it being that bad every week? Not even close. But the nice thing is for them, they have a pretty good offense as a whole. You have one of the best running backs in the NFL in James Robinson. Laviska Shenault looked the part that he can be a star receiver potentially in this league with his ability after the catch. Reminds me a lot of a younger Sammy Watkins in a way. A lot of bubble screens, a lot of, get him out in space and let him run kind of thing. So there's some promise there. DJ Chark's a good receiver. Marvin Jones is a phenomenal red zone receiver. But the tight end spots where I have issues overall.
Right. One last note on Jacksonville. There's always going to be some struggles when you have a brand new system coming in. Darrell Bevell, of course, new there in Jacksonville. You have a brand new head coach. You have a brand new rookie quarterback. Your number 2 running back is out for the season. And you've got a whole bunch of new starters as well along that whole entire team. You got new starters in the secondary. You've got a whole bunch of new starters along that defensive front. So you're looking at a team that just has a lot of new pieces. They're going to take a little while to figure it out there. And they just don't have the most talent either on top of that. So you're going to see a team that's not going to win a ton of games this year, but it's going to be more about development to some of their young guys, really installing that system and trying to build a culture there, which I think is one thing that you and I both admit Urban Meyer does do a very good job of, is building that culture. So we'll see where Jacksonville can really build to in the future. Transitioning now to another team, Austin, my New York Jets, of course, lost to the Carolina Panthers in a narrow defeat. Sam Darnold looked pretty good in that game for Carolina. What was your biggest takeaway from the Carolina-New York Jets matchup?
I think the game kind of went how we expected it to, just considering that we thought Carolina was a better team, and I thought that it was going to be, a slimmer margin of victory. But I think the New York Jets have proven that they are on their way. I think this is not the same old New York Jets team that we've seen for the last decade. I think they're a little bit different than that. Zach Wilson's a dynamic quarterback. He had some really nice flashes during that game, his ability to play off schedule, to play make. Corey Davis looked the part as well. I know we were both very critical when that signing happened, but maybe he can prove that he is that true, at least top tier number 2 receiver, maybe number 1 for New York. Who knows how that'll go. However, New York Jets, better than I expected, but I still think that they are going to have a brutal season as a whole.
Right. I think the cornerback play is going to hold us back. And I'm glad you mentioned Corey Davis because that's one of the few bright spots really from week 1 for me offensively. You see Corey Davis as a guy who you and I thought that he's not going to be an elite wide receiver, but him and Zach Wilson found a lot of success and chemistry during the preseason. And you and I talked about this a little bit after the preseason. I was not a believer when that transaction happened, when he got signed to the New York Jets. But I'm starting to come around on him a little bit. He's impressed me when he's had the ball in his hands, and him and Zach Wilson are on the same page very often, it looks like. So I'm hoping that he can be what Joe Douglas kind of envisioned for him. I'm still not sure if he's going to get to where he needs to be a number 1 wide receiver, but I'm a little bit more optimistic than I was back in March when we signed him. So I'm pretty happy about that. Let's move now, Austin, into week 2. Some of the games here. Let's go ahead and start at the top here of this webpage. And the first matchup here on Thursday night is an interdivisional matchup, the New York Giants versus Washington football team, Austin. Of course, both of these teams are now 0-1. Who do you think wins that game? And really, what's the big storyline to watch?
Well, the big storyline is, after a full week of preparation, is Taylor Heineke going to be ready to go now with the Ryan Fitzpatrick news? This is Taylor Heineke's team, and I think we both kind of felt that way, that at some point in the year that would happen almost regardless, just because there's going to be a shorter leash for Ryan Fitzpatrick like his whole career has been. So they were probably anxious to already go to him, but they were not probably anticipating it this early in the season. I see Washington winning this game. I think it's going to be a closer game, but Thursday night, I think that Washington's defensive line is going to kind of eat up the Giants a little bit, and Daniel Jones is going to be under duress all night. I mean, they better have a plan to run the football because it's going to be a really, really tough night running and throwing against this Washington front, especially with where the New York Giants are offensively right now. Washington should win this game.
Washington is just the better team. They're a little bit more well-rounded, in my opinion. And as you mentioned, that defensive front is insane. Jay Mouse, welcome to the stream. We were expecting you to be in here. Of course, you're a diehard 49ers fans, and right in time, we are about to be talking about them as the Sunday matchup. They're on the screen right now. Austin, the Eagles did pull out a win in week one. I don't think that you and I are big-time believers in that squad. For San Francisco, what's their keys to success to beat a team like Philadelphia, and what do you expect the final of that score to be?
Really, it's going to come down to, can you pass protect against this pretty good Eagles front? The Eagles, historically speaking, over the last couple of years at least, have had really, really nice defensive fronts. They throw a lot of different looks at you. But if the 49ers could really make those corners make some plays, it's going to be a long night, because I don't believe in the Eagles secondary. So it actually should be quite a bit of throwing the football for the 49ers. And I'm kind of interested to see how many plays that Trey Lance gets during this game. I'm not sure exactly how they want to utilize them this time around, but I think the 49ers are best suited to throw the ball actually quite a bit this game. No Mostert. I guess, will we see Trey Sermon? Probably. We have to, I'd imagine. Mitchell's a popular name that we're seeing right now as well in terms of picking him up in fantasy. So that's something to kind of monitor right now. And if you're a 49ers fan, I feel pretty confident even going into Philly and getting this victory.
Right. I think San Francisco for sure walks out with a win here. Cincy, probably not super happy to hear that. I know you're a diehard Seahawks fan, so no way you're cheering for the 49ers on Sunday. But of course, Jay Mouse is hoping to see his team get a W. And I'm fairly certain that the 49ers will walk out of Philadelphia with smiles on their faces after what I expect to be a pretty big time win. So welcome everyone again to the stream. Austin, let's zoom out here and take kind of a generic look at some of the matchups here on Sunday as I scroll through. Stop me if you see any that are really of key interest to you, something that I think sticks out that you would like to talk about a little bit more.
I want to talk about the Patriots-Jets game, and I'm going to prompt you. So with this matchup early on, the Jets are at home clearly in this. Do you think the Jets realistically could pull out a week 2 victory against the Patriots?
Quite frankly, I don't see it. I think that New England's going to cause a lot of problems up front for the New York Jets. Mekhi Becton is out with that ankle sprain for, I believe, 3 to 6 weeks at least. So the Jets, who already struggled with protection this past week quite a bit, Zach Wilson's going to be running for his life, kind of like Sam Darnold did the last 3 years. It's just not a healthy situation for the New York Jets. The Patriots are going to come with their multiple front, bring a lot of blitz pressure, and similar to how we saw Sam Darnold just a couple of years ago say, I'm seeing ghosts when playing against the New England Patriots. We might see a similar situation now. I think Zach Wilson's probably a little bit better equipped as a quarterback to deal with some pressure in his face, try and make plays off schedule and do some things like that. But at the end of the day, I just don't think the Jets have what it has what it takes to beat the New England Patriots here in week 2. I just think that they're a better team than the New York Jets. And even though we're at MetLife, I'm just not really buying into what the Jets are putting out on the field quite yet, especially with Mekhi Becton out. I think we're going to struggle to set up the run. And I think Bill Belichick's going to game plan very well around the whole Corey Davis resurgence. So we'll see exactly how everything plays out there. Austin, what's your thoughts on the Jets-Patriots?
I think it's going to actually be a pretty close game. Like you said, the Patriots are going to throw a lot of different looks at Zach Wilson. And we know, historically speaking, Bill Belichick does a very nice job against rookie quarterbacks. He has an insane record against them. I don't think this is really going to be any different, but I do think that the Jets are going to put up a better fight than they have in years past. So that's something to kind of monitor as well. There's a couple of other games that I do want to kind of allude to here. Seahawks versus Titans. Let's talk about that one. That's going to be a phenomenal game. The Titans are obviously going to be looking to run the ball a ton in that game, really trying to establish a great time of possession. Seahawks are going to be slinging it through the air. For Tennessee, I think the key to the game is really just keeping Tyler Lockett actually contained. I know a lot of people worry about DK Metcalf, but Tyler Lockett has been on an absolute tear these last couple of weeks, extending back to last season.
Right. Luckily here for the Tennessee Titans, the Seattle Seahawks don't have Chandler Jones on their team. So that is one thing that they don't have to worry about as much going into week 2 here. Tyler Lockett, I think he's one of the most underrated wide receivers in the entire NFL. And for some reason, even though I feel like almost everyone has this discussion that he's one of the most underrated receivers, he continues to stay underrated. What's your reasoning, Austin, on why that is? Because he consistently puts together great seasons.
I think part of it is just, there's nothing physically imposing about him. Like he's not the fastest guy in the field. Don't get me wrong, he's a quick receiver, but he's not the fastest, he's not the strongest, he's not the biggest in that regard. He's just average size, and he's not the flashiest player, but he makes big time plays for sure down the field. We saw this past week, he was going absolutely crazy, and he's Russell Wilson's arguably his favorite target. He's had a lot of good years together with him. So the Tennessee Titans are going to have their hands full with that Wilson to Lockett connection.
Earlier on in the show, Austin, we talked about Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes being arguably the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the NFL. And I do think that is the truth. But also looking now at the Seattle Seahawks, we have, of course, Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett. And they've connected so many times on deep balls. Russell Wilson throws such a beautiful deep ball, gets good air under his throw, and usually puts it right on the money. And Tyler Lockett usually seems to be the guy on the other end of those types of throws. We saw it again this past week with his couple of touchdowns. Those two are on another level when it comes to their connection, their ability to throw the ball deep and really make a lot of plays together. If you had to give a generic ranking, top 5, top 3, top 10 area, where would you rank those two in terms of a duo together in the NFL?
I think you'd have to just look generically top 10, because there's some other ones that are really, really tough to beat. Another one that comes to mind is Aaron Rodgers, Devonte Adams. That is a top tier one. That's hard to break the chemistry on that. Another one that's actually been really, really consistent over the years. Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley is starting to really, really establish a great connection there as well. Their timing is phenomenal. And you could also argue Julio and Matt Ryan as well. So they've had some good ones, but I mean, generically speaking, probably in that top 10 area, just because, Tyler Lockett's not the top kind of receiver.
Right.
He's a very, very good receiver. Don't get me wrong, but I think in that top 10, I mean, maybe you could extend to top 5.
Right. I think they're kind of right in that area where, maybe top 5 is just a little high, but without a serious list in front of us, kind of just a generic ranking, anywhere between, maybe 8 to 6-ish kind of makes a lot of sense off the top of our head. Now, Austin, you had mentioned Aaron Rodgers and Devonte Adams. They did not look good in week 1 in their big-time loss to Jameis Winston and the New Orleans Saints. Of course, Jameis put up 5 touchdowns through the air in what looked like a really good performance for him. Now, talking about Aaron Rodgers specifically, because there's been so much rumor, so much drama around him and the Green Bay camp. They just don't have any chemistry right now, him and the organization. We've seen, of course, a lot of reports that he considered retirement, wants to be traded. Thought it was very possible he could have gotten traded on draft night this past year. His lack of performance in week 1, ultimately getting put on the bench for the fourth quarter in favor of Jordan Love, getting him some snaps for his development. Are we seeing a changing of the guard here in Green Bay in terms of the way that Aaron Rodgers just isn't going to be the same guy this year?
I think there's a lot of distraction. I mean, he's not going to be the quarterback he was last year, but I don't want people to overreact in the same breath that he's going to be bad. There are people that think he's just bad now. That's just not correct. But he's not going to be that same quarterback. I think there's just too much going on. There was too much turmoil. I think he lost some of the locker room, which I don't blame some of the guys he's playing with for what he pulled during the offseason. That was inexcusable how he handled that. I mean, people had no idea if he's even going to come back and play football. They had no idea if he's going to be back with the organization. He just continuously will throw this team under the bus no matter what. It doesn't matter, doesn't faze him, he doesn't care. So that's what bothers me about the situation, but I think he won't be that same quarterback he was last year.
My thoughts on Aaron Rodgers in that locker room that you mentioned, I think that there's, some of that locker room that is the guys that Aaron Rodgers wants to be there. And then the other half of the locker room is guys that Aaron Rodgers don't care if they're there or not. We had heard some stories about this with Greg Jennings a few years back that in a matchup against the San Francisco 49ers, he told the San Francisco 49ers cornerback that they should go ahead and try and sign Greg Jennings the next offseason when he was becoming a free agency. So I think that Aaron Rodgers, his involvement, trying to be part of that front office, making decisions on who's there or not. Randall Cobb, for example, talking about Clay Matthews, of course, David Bakhtiari, and also Devonte Adams are in his corner, of course. But then there's another side of the locker room that probably isn't in agreement with him on some of those decisions. And I think it's going to divide this football team. And maybe take away from what they could be. Because I think that you and I look at them as a team that could possibly win a Super Bowl if everything goes right for them. And if this becomes a distraction that lasts throughout the season, it's probably going to hinder where they get to. It's a tough division as well. You're looking at, the Minnesota Vikings, who didn't perform week one, ended up losing to the Cincinnati Bengals. They're still a really good team. I think that they could easily win that division if Green Bay doesn't get their act together. So it's going to be a tough situation to monitor. Now, you talked about the overreactions, though, on Aaron Rodgers. I want your biggest overreaction from week one. Any concern you have or anything that, maybe you changed your mind on. What is one big thing that you think an overreaction that could maybe come out to be true?
That could come out to be true.
Yes. So something. Yeah. So for me,
define what you mean by that.
Yeah. So for me, for example, Mac Jones looked really, really good. So an overreaction could maybe be that Mac Jones is going to be like a Pro Bowl level quarterback. I don't necessarily believe that myself, but that could be a generic example. I know I'm putting you on the spot here too, Austin. So try your best here to give us something.
Well, I think something that, if we look at a generic overreaction, I think it's to the Raiders win on Monday night. I think that there's a massive overreaction to Baltimore's side of it. I think a lot of people are super negative on Lamar because all of a sudden now I'm seeing all these stat nerds coming in and saying he hasn't thrown for 250 yards in X amount of games, and only guys like Kyle Bowler have had more. And it's like, I understand that, but this is the most dynamic running quarterback we've ever seen. He's going to have a better career than Michael Vick, and that is a fact. You can put that wherever you want it. He is going to have a better career than Michael Vick, and I think he's not the thrower that Michael Vick was in terms of how lively his arm is, but I mean he still has a pretty decent arm.
Right,
definitely can sling it. So I guess for me, it's overreacting to both sides of the Raiders' point of view, thinking that they're better than they are, because I think they are a bottom 5-ish team. And I also think that the Ravens, people just think that they're bad now, which that's also incorrect.
The Raiders are always good for one big-time upset win in the early part of the season. Remember, last year, the Chiefs' sole loss in the regular season came at the hands of the Las Vegas Raiders, besides Week 17, of course, when they rested their starters. When they went 14-2 last year. The Raiders were the one team that upset them, and ultimately it didn't really lead to anything. They missed the playoffs last year. I still believe the same will be true this year. I don't see the Raiders, getting into the postseason, but Brian Edwards was a nice bright spot for them in that Week 1 matchup. And I think one other team that I think we're seeing a little bit of an overreaction on maybe is the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers from that game. Now, I know the Steelers are a very, very good team. They got a very nice defense. Last year, they started 11-0. Before that collapse near the back end of the season. I just don't necessarily think that people should be shifting their opinion, even though the Bills were at home in Buffalo, lost. The Bills are a better team than the Pittsburgh Steelers, in my estimation. It's one matchup. I just don't think that we can really, at the end of the day, take too much stock into that. I think that the Bills should still be considered the second best team in the AFC behind the Kansas City Chiefs until there's sustained reasoning on why they aren't. Because the Bills are a team that have an elite defense. They are phenomenally well coached on that side of the ball. They have a very gutsy offensive coordinator in Brian Dable, who likes to put the ball in the hands of his best player, Josh Allen. And they've got an elite wide receiver who has a case to be the best wide receiver in football some weeks in Stephon Diggs. When you have that combination, you're going to be a pretty darn good team every single year. And I think that they're going to be a team that, even with some of these Week 1 critics about Josh Allen, who's received a lot of flack in his career, albeit some of it from me even, I just think that they're a better team than people are giving them credit for after a 7-point loss in Week 1. It's not the end of the world. Any concluding thoughts, Austin, on either Week 2, Week 1, or anything in generic about the NFL? We probably are going to be ending this live stream, so thanks again, everyone who has come in here. Austin, closing thoughts.
I just want to say that I think Week 2 is going to be really good to kind of rebalance people's opinions. I think we will come back down to earth on some of these players. I definitely think you were right. You hit the nail on the head with the whole Buffalo situation. I'm also excited to see how the Cowboys come out. I mean, they had a very impressive Week 1 against the Buccaneers. So very excited to see how they perform in Week 2.
Right. If Dallas had listened to us and maybe drafted a cornerback on night 1 of the NFL draft, maybe Anthony Brown wouldn't have had about 150 yards put up on him That was a fun matchup to watch for sure. Antonio Brown got him. Chris Godwin got him. It seems like everyone got him, honestly, on Thursday Night Football. So I think he'll be the player to monitor for Dallas. Again, hopefully you all did enjoy the live stream. Hit that like button if you did enjoy. Check out our TikTok. Link is in the description. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter as well. We also have some merchandise that's in the bio. A lot of stuff for you guys to be doing here at Utility Sports. We do appreciate you all so much. Thank you for being understanding with our schedules. We just are super busy at the moment. We're trying to navigate some things in life and also figure it out here for Utility Sports YouTube. So we do appreciate you guys a lot. Thanks again for sticking with us. Sid and C, J Mouse, to name a few. You guys are absolutely awesome subscribers. So lucky to have you guys in our corner and a part of our base of people that we get to talk football with. We really do appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.